Inspiration sparks and raises our vibration, encouraging all of us to live our best lives. And it is my pleasure to welcome our speaker this evening, Jen Rosson. Jen is an ordained minister and endeavors to be an inspiration to those she serves. She is the Vice President of SCOA and the Director of Spiritual Expression Center. A warm harmony welcome to Jen.
Thank you, Darren. Today's inspirational reading is taken from the Hermetica, a group of ancient writings dating back to the 3rd century. This Hermetic philosophical tradition is attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, a legendary historical figure believed to have originated as a fusing of the Greek god Hermes, the god of communication, and the Egyptian god Thoth, the god of wisdom. This particular selection from the teachings of the Hermetica has been translated into modern language and was published in the 1991 book, The Enlightened Mind by Stephen Mitchell. If you don't make yourself equal to God, you can't perceive God. For like is known by like. Leap free of everything that is physical and grow as vast as that immeasurable vastness. Step beyond all time and become eternal. Then you will perceive God. Realize that nothing is impossible for you. Recognize that you too are immortal and that you can embrace all things in your mind. Find your home in the heart of every living creature. Make yourself higher than the heights and lower than all depths. Bring all opposites inside yourself and reconcile them. Understand that you are everywhere, on the land, in the sea, in the sky. Realize that you haven't yet been begotten, that you are still in the womb, that you are young, that you are old, that you are dead, that you are in the world beyond the grave. Hold all this in your mind, all times and places, all substances and qualities and magnitudes. Then you can perceive God. Wanting to know God is the road that leads to God, and it is an easy road to travel. God will come to meet you everywhere. He will appear to you everywhere, at times and places when you don't expect it, while you are awake and while you are asleep, while you are traveling and while you are at home, while you are speaking and while you are silent. For there is nothing in which God does not exist. And don't think that God is invisible. Who is more evident than God? That is why he made all things, so that through all things you can see him. Well, good day, everyone. We have so many people here from so many different time zones. I'm never sure whether to say good afternoon, good evening, even good morning, maybe. I don't know. So I'm just going to play it safe and say good day and how wonderful it is to see y'all. As I just said, our inspirational reading today came from an ancient text, a group of writings believed to have been written around the 3rd century. The words and ideas of the Hermetica were subsequently rediscovered and translated into Latin during the Renaissance, sometime between the 14th and 17th centuries, and eventually into modern language that we can understand today. The Hermetic view of philosophy and religion has remained relevant throughout the centuries that have followed, due to its timeless ideas that were expressed within it. Ancient philosophy and wisdom can be just as true today as it was all those centuries ago, a testimony to the adage, everything old is new again. I found this passage interesting and thought-provoking because it both challenges the reader at the same time as it's attempting to provide inspiration. It dares us to step outside of this strictly physical dimension and look at ourselves objectively as eternal spiritual beings and examine what our role and responsibilities are in fulfilling our goals for this earthly experience. These words sum up so many of our human questions and frailties, exposing their commonality across the ages of humanity in just 2 paragraphs. Now, that first line may have thrown some of you. If you don't make yourself equal to God, you can't perceive God. This isn't asking us to equate ourselves to the Creator. It's reminding us that we are part of our divine source. We all carry within us what many refer to as a spark of that divinity. That spark that's found at the core of our eternal soul. And it contains the light that casts out all darkness. We humans tend to get overwhelmed or distracted and forget that we are much more than that face on our driver's license. We've all heard the phrase repeated often in this country, especially, you can be anything you want to be. Well, that is exactly what the ancients were trying to convey. By opening our minds and our hearts to the truth of the cosmos, we acknowledge our eternal nature. And that this physical experience, while invaluable, is really a momentary blip on the radar. We are all things at all times, the highest of highs, the lowest of lows. We are young, we are old, even the concept that we have left this physical existence for the spirit world beyond. When we embrace this non-linear spiritual view of time, we recognize that we are each a tiny cell within the fabric of the universe. And everything becomes much more transparent and clear. And yes, we can begin to perceive the peace and stillness of our Creator. Within that space, we find love, compassion, kindness, and forgiveness. Richard Rohr, one of my favorite authors on spirituality, writes about the nature of God this way. He says, the people who know God well, the mystics, the hermits, those who risk everything to find God, always meet a lover, not a dictator. God is never found to be an abusive father or a tyrannical mother, but always a lover who is more than we dared hope for. How different than the account manager that most people seem to worship. God is a lover who receives and forgives everything. I think this human experience inherently tries to limit the magnitude of God's love. We want to define and label what's right and what's wrong because that's how order has always been maintained here on planet Earth. Everything seems to be transactional, a balancing of accounts. But what if we didn't limit our outlook to this third planet from the sun? What if we opened our mind to the infinite breadth of this universe and the dimensions beyond? What if we embrace the concept of our Creator's universal love and forgiveness in the here and now? What a different world. Obviously, this idea puts a lot of weight on our shoulders. We have to assume the mantle of responsibility for pursuing this relationship with everything and everyone. And that requires commitment and passion, and dedication and persistence. This is the road that leads to God, as referenced in the Hermetica. Part of the core beliefs of another ancient tradition, Buddhism, are the practices of cultivating compassion and practicing mindfulness, encompassing these principles, among others, in an effort to have a most enlightened and meaningful life. Through compassion, we let go of that human tendency to make things either right or wrong. And along the way, leave the judgment of others by the wayside. Compassion and kindness are never wasted emotions. They are a requirement for joy and happiness. A quote attributed to the Buddha says, "A single candle can light 1,000 candles, and the life of the candle will not be shortened." Happiness never decreases by being shared. On the contrary, when we open our hearts in empathy with another, we grow ever closer to the divine presence we are so eagerly seeking. Through mindfulness, we become aware of the infinite supply of opportunities for acknowledging God's existence in everything and everyone, even when we don't expect it. And isn't it nice when we get surprised? Like when you find a spot in nature that literally takes your breath away, that feeling of awe at such an incredible display of beauty. These are the moments that reveal how attuned our perception of God is and how mindful we are to appreciate it. Mindfulness encourages us to realize that our Creator's presence surrounds us every minute of every day. I reference mindfulness a lot in my talks, and that's intentional. I've come to realize that I spent way too much of my life going through the motions, as the saying goes. I think many of us get caught up with family, jobs, and all the other obligations and responsibilities this human experience encompasses. And that's okay, as long as we also take the time to smell the coffee, kiss the puppy, and see the reflection of the divine that's all around us. C.S. Lewis wrote, "We may ignore, but we can nowhere evade the presence of God. The world is crowded with him. He walks everywhere incognito." I have this image in my brain of like the trench coat and the fedora and the dark glasses. Back to the subject. We have to be awake to be awakened. We have to accept the presence of the light within us to be able to see the light all around us. We have to walk the walk when it comes to the ideals of compassion and forgiveness. Ultimately, we have to shoulder the mantle of responsibility and be mindful emissaries of the divine spark dwelling in the core of our souls. Philosophers, theologians, and great thinkers throughout history have written and argued about all of these ideas. No matter their culture or tradition or religion, there have always been these commonalities that persist through time or place. No one is immune to humanity's ongoing search for answers to eternal questions. The Hermetic writings are evidence of that. But by being awake and attuned, we can answer many of these queries all on our own. Through prayer, meditation, and mindfulness practices, we are able to navigate this journey, hopefully with fewer potholes along the way. I'll leave you with a reminder of the closing question from our reading. Who is more evident than God? That is why he made all things, so that through all things you can see him. My hope is for all of us to seek that enlightened life to find the joy that can only be found through the light of the divine. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for allowing me to serve today.